Welcome, everybody, to Crossing the Line with Greg Heym, where each week we dig into the latest news on the economy, housing, and all things Greg, because that's what you got to give the people what they want, I suppose. Right, Ray?
They've been asking and they shall receive.
Sure. Today is March 4th, a day of action. So, we're gonna be trying especially hard because we don't necessarily have the most exciting material always. So we're going to bring our A game. It's our 15th episode. I know. Why do we keep counting? Because we still can't believe it's lasted this long, I suppose. I am the aforementioned Greg Heym, chief economist of Brown Harris Stevens and author of The Line, a weekly economics and housing blog. Special welcome to all new visitors and listeners out there. Please make sure to subscribe to this and all the other great podcasts on the More Network. Today I'm joined by Hannah.
Hello.
And we have Ray and Lena behind the scenes. Maybe one of these days they'll get in front of the camera. Maybe not. But,
Don't put them on the spot like that.
I'm not putting them on the spot. Maybe one of these days I'll get behind the scenes and I'll say action. And, we are here, as always, at beautiful Studio 1873. Wonderfully decorated by the Everset,
Yes.
one of our sponsors. Looks great. And is always trying to be informative, concise, entertaining, and edgy all at the same time. Any questions, comments, you can always send them to ctl@bhsusa.com.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
How was your weekend, Hannah?
It was short,
Okay, well.
but it was good. How was yours?
I had a St. Patrick's Day parade gig that was supposed to be 4 hours. We actually played for 4.5 hours. Wow. We did take small breaks, but as in the crowd's into it, and the St. Patrick's Day parade will get people into it. It was fun. I got to say, it was.
Fun.
You want to play those songs that you dread playing, like you hear "Sweet Caroline" one more time. You just want to smash your guitar.
That's just like a bar anthem.
I know. It's easy. It's like, a song with 3 chords in it. Let's just play that, and it's good. But it was great, and thanks to everybody at BK Sweeney's in Bethpage. It was a great time. So let's get to why we're here, I think, which are our line items.
Yes.
Why don't we start? And what's first on the list?
Core PCE was up 0.4% in January, which was as expected.
Right. Now that doesn't seem like an exciting headline for sure, and people, new listeners and viewers will wonder what PCE means. PCE stands for Personal Consumption Expenditures, another measure of what consumers are buying. And within that is what we call the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. So that actually measures what the prices of those goods people are buying, what's happening to them. And it's this core PCE, or as we call it, the cool older cousin, that gets all the love from the Fed, even though the PI brothers, the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Index, get all the love from the media. So why does the Fed love PCE and not CPI in particular, which really is what people talk about? Well, this started in the late 1990s, a time that was very important to me. I got married in 1998, so.
Great time for music, great time for movies.
I wouldn't go with the
married.
music thing. Getting married, I'll say, but so this was the Greenspan era of the Fed. So when you have an index, a consumer price index or a personal consumption index, you basically have to weight all the items in that index. So look at things on this table, right? An iPad, a mug, a Ron Guidry bobblehead, a microphone.
The essentials.
So we have to buy all these things. So how much weight do we put into each thing we buy? We have to ask, the consumer price index will ask people, how much do you spend on mugs or bobbleheads or whatever it is? Whereas, and so it's a consumer survey, whereas the PCE tracks spending, so they know how to weight the data better because they have the actual numbers. So where does this conflict? Well, it's funny I asked myself that because there was this great article in the Wall Street Journal last week that really talked about the difference. And one of the most notable things that they pointed out was spending on alcohol. So,
Interesting.
yes. What do you think's in this cup, Ray? So, PCE, again, the personal consumption expenditures data, which is a lot more complete, shows that people spend about double their share of spending on alcohol than the CPI does. Now, how is that? Maybe people are afraid to actually admit how much they spend on alcohol when they're questioned. And CPI is done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, my former employer. PCE is done by the Commerce Department, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which also puts out the GDP numbers, which are, the numbers we look forward to every quarter. Another thing that's interesting is housing. We always talk about is about 1/3 of the consumer price index and really driving about 2/3 of that increase in the number, but it's only 15% of PCE. So there's a little background. We didn't get too far into the weeds, only about 5 minutes into the weeds. The Fed's target rate of inflation is 2% annually. We hear that all the time. Right now, core PCE is running at 2.8%. And core CPI is running at 3.9%. PCE usually runs lower than CPI, but according to the great article by the Wall Street Journal, it's usually about a 0.4% difference. Now it's running a little over a 1% difference. So, it's something to keep an eye on. Surveys like the Consumer Price Index and pretty much any survey, any government agency does are always re-benchmark every year. They look at where they need to make adjustments. But now that we got that really exciting stuff out of the way. So what does all this mean? Well, as Hannah said, the monthly increase was as expected, 0.4%. So was the year-over-year increase of 2.8% in core PCE. So it tells us right away the Fed's got more work to do because their goal is 2%. The number they use to measure that is running at 2.8%. So again, all you people out there, we know you want your rate cuts. You're not getting them for a while. You're lucky if you get them by the fourth quarter of this year, to be honest with you. And that's not a bad thing. So again, when you don't come in hotter than expected, then you're not going to see a problem with stocks. And there certainly wasn't a problem with stocks because last week, both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 ended the week at record highs. So that's good. If they came in lower than expected, then they'd even be higher records. But that's okay. So there's a lot of things in this report. It's funny because the report isn't called the core PCE report. It basically looks at expenditures and income. So expenditures, personal consumption expenditures, rose 0.2% in January. But that gain is solely due to price increases. If we adjust for inflation, personal consumption expenditures actually fell 0.1%. So that's just another case of us spending more money and getting less stuff. Now, I know that some of you may remember, you say, well, Greg, wasn't retail sales down much bigger than, down almost 1%? Why is personal consumption expenditures up? Because neither is adjusted for inflation, the headline number. Well, again, part of it is who's doing the survey. Retail sales done by the Census Bureau. Let's throw another agency in there. And again, PCE done by the Commerce Department. The PCE, again, is a much more thorough report because it's looking at all of the spending, whereas retail sales works a little bit differently. They ask about a specific set of items. So when we're looking at spending, and the PCE is what's going to influence the GDP numbers. I know more letters. So gross domestic product, again, the value of all goods and services produced in the United States. We look at retail sales every month because, we need something to talk about on the show. And it usually comes in a week when there's nothing else. But, it is a personal consumption expenditures that'll give us the best look. And before you adjust them for inflation, they're still slightly positive. But that's not going to stay that way. Another thing in here is incomes, and incomes rose 1% personal income in January. That's a huge increase and was much higher than expected. But a lot of that and the Commerce Department said this in their press release, was due to a 3.2% cost of living adjustment to Social Security. We saw this last year when the adjustment was almost 3 times that amount. So congratulations to all you Social Security collectors out there. Ma, now you can give me more money. Okay, so I take money from my mother. I don't ask for it. There's a difference. My grandmother used to always say, never refuse money if someone wants to give it to you.
And that's good advice.
So there you go.
You could be like, oh, no, I'm all right. And then, on the second offer, you're like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, next thing you know, like something, you see a new guitar you want to buy, and that's it.
It's an addiction. Great.
All right, so to sum up, this data on core PCE, it came in as expected, so that's good. Personal income rose sharply, but again, that was due to that hike in Social Security. Consumers spent more than they did the prior month, but they got less for their money. And the bottom line is this report will have zero impact on what the Fed does this month when they meet, because they're not touching rates.
Right.
They've done everything again but send everybody a card in the mail saying, yeah, sorry, but we have no rate cuts for you this month. So that was the happy headline, maybe?
Yeah.
The next headline, not so exciting.
Yeah, pending home sales were down 5% in January.
Right. So this data comes from the National Association of Realtors. Pending home sales are based on contracts. They're pending. They haven't closed yet. So it's really a measure of the future, not the past. Closed sales, typically you negotiate, and then within a month or two you close. Here in New York, if you're buying a co-op, that number could be 3 months. Or if you're buying a new development apartment, it could be a couple of years. But on average, on a national standpoint, it's a much shorter period of time. So they fell technically 4.9%, rounded up to 5%. And, the reasons for this are, reasons we're all too familiar with. Very low inventory still.
Right.
And you add in rising mortgage rates. We had a nice little decline in rates at the end of last year. That hasn't happened this year. Rates have been ticking up. Again, we harp on all the better than expected economic data we've gotten, most notably in hiring. Stock market has been going gangbusters. So that's, why rates have yet to come down. But one of the things I sarcastically asked myself questions in the report, because one, we were harping last week when we had Ari in here about how existing home sales rose in January. And again, it's always helpful to point out the difference that, first of all, thanks for watching last week's show and reading last week's column. But remember, the pending home sales are the future. The contract is signed. It hasn't closed yet. The closing, you're usually looking at particularly the mortgage environment from 2 months ago. And 2 months ago, rates were lower than they are now. So this isn't good news. I mean, it's not surprising news, but it isn't good news. What we really need from a national standpoint, and certainly a lot of the markets around us here and the ones we deal in, is we need more inventory and lower rates. That's what you need to get housing prices down. We could get one, the other, or both. And I do think both are going to happen this year. But, just like Fed rate cuts, we may have to wait a little bit longer than we want for mortgage rates to come down. And we point this out all the time, but, the Fed doesn't have to cut short-term rates for mortgage rates to come down. It's really about future inflation expectations. And, whether you look at the personal consumption expenditures or retail sales, consumer spending is slowing. It's not in question. So I think they'll happen, but, just to be sarcastic at the end of the item, I made a joke that, did I forget to point out that mortgage rates just rose for the 4th straight week. And they've really touched above 7% in any given moment. Again, the average conforming mortgage rate over the last half century is closer to 8%. But I know it does go to affordability, and, we certainly miss the days of 3% mortgage rates. But again, that was something that had never happened before. So we have to keep a perspective on that. And I do think, Ari touched on this last week, that people are facing reality right now. They're saying, okay, we can't wait for these rates to go down. We need to buy. We want to buy. Inventory is low. We need to make a decision, or we're just going to be in the sidelines forever. The chance to refinance is always there, right? So I think, it's been a slow start to the year. Hopefully that's changing. I've talked to a lot of brokers here in New York City in the last couple of weeks, and they're telling me that they are there's a lot of activity brewing, and that people are seeing more. They want to see more, not so much pulling the trigger. But today's actually a nice day. Yesterday was a beautiful day. Maybe it's starting to feel like spring. That would always be exciting for us. Warm weather to change people's attitude, and it is March 4th.
Yeah, it was like a little adrenaline boost. Everybody was out driving their cars on the shore. It was really beautiful. So
anybody go on the water? Anybody?
No, that's
no. It's
psychotic.
Only cool to go in like January or.
Yeah. If you go in now, it's just like, what are you doing?
You can't wait. It's as someone who lives near the beaches, I can't wait so I can go. But it's hard because knowing when the water won't be too chilling.
Yeah, in like August.
Yeah, but then the jellyfish come out, or the sharks.
Yeah.
I remember that was like the worst.
You get like one good swimming day, like every beach season. So
I remember
can't wait for that day.
2020 during COVID, like the only thing you do is go to the beach.
Yeah.
And in Long Island, Nassau County by me, they had all these shark sightings, and it's like now we can't even do that. We could stand here and get our feet wet, literally. So that was the line items. Now on Friday, we're going to get the employment report for February, and that's going to be really important because that's going to really move markets depending on how it turns out. So we'll have an exciting topic, and there's other stuff that will come out.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
So now let's go to the lineup. What's the first item?
So Bankrate did a survey, and it came out that half of aspiring homeowners can't actually afford a down payment. And then it got into some of the reasons why, which is generally people don't make enough money and living costs are just too high.
Yeah, student loan debt, which people might think, because now now some have to pay it. It's hard to keep track of how many people's loans have been forgiven. That was only 10% of the respondents said that. The scarier numbers maybe were the 20% think they'll never afford a down payment.
Right.
And 30% said it would take more than 5 years to save for a down payment. So I have some things to say on this, but let's start with the younger generation. You're the voice of a generation.
Yeah.
And Pepsi, wasn't that their slogan, right? The voice of a new generation. So as somebody who may be better in tune with this data than me, what do you think about this? And if you want to share how you feel.
Yeah, when I read this article, I put a lot of thought into it. And I think that when you look at people that are in their 20s, like my friends and I, it's kind of unusual for someone my age to not only purchase a home, but have the desire strong enough to be looking. Personally, I'm not looking to buy a home yet. So I don't think it's as crucial as some people think, but personally that's just me.
Well, I think, not to sound like my grandmother, but each generation feels like they have it harder than the one before.
Right.
And with the inflation, obviously, the last couple of years, everything has become more expensive. And look, just a couple of observations from my own life. When 30% said it would take more than 5 years to save for a down payment. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
It took me more than 5 years to save for a down payment. Homes were expensive when I bought in 2006.
It's inevitable. I mean,
I think part of the problem is that some parents or grandparents may also what they tell their kids or kids learn from their parents' experience, that maybe they were in their mid-20s when they bought a home or early 30s, and should I be able to do that? Well, I was 36 when I bought my first home. Now, for a variety of reasons, I didn't know any undergrad debt. Luckily, I got some scholarships to do that. But, I had a grad school debt I had to pay for. I had a wedding to pay for. And we had, like you said, people sometimes have other priorities at that time. And, I bought in 2006. It's important to point out that if you look at the Case-Shiller Index from the national standpoint, it took 15 years for home prices to get back to those levels after the financial crisis. So there are buying opportunities. I think you can't look at a time where affordability is at such a low, because it's not going to stay that way. Something is going to give at some point. And, I think both things will give, this year, again, more inventory and lower rates. I think also that sometimes people need to broaden their searches. We all, for the most part, aren't living in the number one place we'd like to live in. Whether in the suburbs, that could be not getting a basement or not getting the garage you want or not getting the number of bedrooms. But I think that people shouldn't start off so negative in the search.
Agreed.
Sure. I look at the Zestimate on my home. I can't believe anybody would pay that money. My neighborhood's great. I love it. And, it's a great place to live. But I don't know. I think that people are really just this hangover of this inflation that's been making everything so hard is difficult. I bought my home, 18 years ago, and inflation's hurting me. I mean, this stuff, not just stuff you spend, but when you get this house, and I hope you all get the house you want, you have to deal with home insurance. And if you live near the water like me, you are getting crushed, because almost no insurers want to insure anywhere near the water. And the costs of heating and all your utilities are going up. So look, but you can, it's a process of saving and saving and saving and living below your means, or living at home. Now, this is going to sound embarrassing. I lived at home until I got married. I don't view that as a form of embarrassment.
No.
The rent was cheaper, and my three brothers were out of the house for various reasons. So
sounds pretty good.
It was a commitment that, that savings in general is a commitment on the future, not about now. And look, 2/3 of Americans roughly own a home. But like you said, that doesn't mean it's right for everybody. And, people that may be moving or changing jobs, it may not be the right move for them, or if you have to stretch yourself financially, or if you're not going to be able to save for retirement, or have emergency savings for a home, because trust me, stuff breaks in that stuff all the time. Homes, my house I think is about 70-something years old. And
is it really?
Yeah, but when I say it was built in the 50s, it doesn't sound that old, right? But then when you say it's 70 years old, and everything has to be replaced at times.
Mid-century.
No, look, everybody should achieve their dreams, but I think there's perspective. This is the least affordable homes have been, and it's not going to stay that way. Look at the other side. Incomes are rising pretty fast. The job market is fantastic for young people. Just keep, as Creedence Clearwater Revival would say, keep chugling on. Just keep doing it, and you'd be surprised. And, it's hard, because in the old days, parents might help you. They write you a check for a couple $1,000s and you buy your home. Now that doesn't even cover your closing costs.
Dad.
Well,
wonderful.
It's hard. And my parents didn't get a house until they were a lot older too. Back then you had kids a lot sooner though, so it was harder. But I didn't mind growing up in an apartment. It was fun. I just wanted to be out of that house, whatever it was. But hang in there, young America.
I'm optimistic.
If it, sometimes the most difficult things you do are the things you're happiest and most proud of. So
that was beautiful.
That is your moment of zen and enlightenment.
Oh my God, that was
poetic. You don't come to an economist for a pep talk, even though it is March 4th.
Right.
But also there are a lot of tools to help you figure out affordability. And I know parents and grandparents will say things like, oh, you're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to. No, we all achieve things that we never thought we would achieve. When I was a kid, I didn't think I would host a podcast. Now, you may say maybe because there was no such thing.
Dreams come true.
But they do.
They do come true. Or have a Ron Guidry bobblehead or
right.
a ridiculous number of guitars. But,
right.
Everybody has dreams. And
those weren't my dreams, but...
Well, it's
these
not
are your dreams and they matter.
It's it is like some people, because I'm an economist with an MBA, will ask me for financial advice, and there's no blanket approach to anything. There's not the right amount of this to do or the right amount of that to do, or listening to Ray and buying Bitcoin. I think there is a lot. We all have choices and we all have different paths. So, but just keep perspective. Don't talk to your grandparents about home ownership. Talk to people that are closer to your age, and you'd be surprised. Their stories, like mine, I don't think is all that different than what people maybe in their mid-20s are going through now. Those people that are young enough to be my children. But anyway, so we have another not so happy but yet entertaining to finish this off today.
Right. Maybe we should have switched these, ended on your poetic, positive note, but it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I can put a positive spin on this one.
Yeah, sorry. The U.S. national debt, what a topic. But it is rising by $1 trillion about every 100 days.
Maybe these numbers are so big, we might as well, say $1 gazillion or whatever, because $1 trillion is not a number we can get our minds around because it is so big. But so the debt hit, the total debt that we owe hit $34 trillion at the beginning of this year. As of Friday, I'll give you the actual number. See if I can say it correctly. $34,471,838,111.75.
That was impressive.
I got the 75 cents if you guys got the rest. The scary thing is we still don't have a budget. The fiscal year started October 1st. They're still fighting. And maybe this is just a deal they make. Like, let's not pass a budget. Then we got to spend the money because we'll say we have to, or the government will shut down. And, I always point out when we talk about government shutdowns, it was a government shutdown that got me into real estate. That's why I left the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 1995, and the rest is history. The concerning thing is, with rates rising sharply, right? The government borrows so much of what they spend. The interest on this debt is going through the roof. We were borrowing it at next to 0% interest. It was all good, just like when people could buy homes with 3% mortgages. Now that has changed. And back in November, Moody's cut our ratings outlook to negative. So, that's you're borrowing more money at higher rates, even if you're the federal government. That's a problem. And, the one thing to remember is every dollar they spend comes out of our pockets one way or another. They either tax us for it or they borrow the money, and then we have to give them the money to pay the debt back. As an economist, I'd rather have that money in the private sector's hands. Well, I'd rather have it in our hands, let's be honest. But the private sector is a heck of a lot more efficient with their money and their investments than the government is. And, the government provides essential services. There's no question. I'm not saying get rid of the federal government. We need a national defense, and we need highways and stuff like that. We certainly do need infrastructure. But, let's get the spending under control. It's both parties. It's not one person or one party that spent all the money. That's how they keep their constituents happy. But the sheer numbers of these are insane. And, all right, so the happy moment of all this is, luckily, the U.S. dollar is still the world's preferred currency. Nice. We're not going to default on our debt. And, our debt to GDP ratio is concerning. See, it's not just how much you owe, it's how much you make. You've got to kind of look at that. Right. And, it's higher than it should be. From the COVID spending that has gone on, related spending the last couple of years, it's just hit another stratosphere, and that's a shame. But get a budget already. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, here in Albany, they don't pay them if they don't pass the budget on time. Maybe we should do something like that on a federal level. And I mean, it's harder for the state and local governments because they have to balance their budgets. The federal government can just say, we'll just borrow the rest, or take Social Security money, and however they do these things. So get it together down there in D.C. We're paying a lot of money for federal government, and they owe us at least a budget, and some responsible spending. Maybe they'll say that they face inflation just like we do to a certain degree, but I'm not going to have sympathy. I mean, come on. It's 34 trillion and change. Like that's a lot. Anyhow, all right. So that is it for this week. The sort of 50-50 version of crossing the line. But again, we'll have the jobs report next week, and we want to thank everybody for the support that we've got. And thanks to the Everset for the set. Everything looks great, and we hope to see you, and hopefully you'll hear us next week.